Democratic leader, Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is the Democratic leader of the United States House of Representatives for the 114th Congress. From 2007 to 2011, Ms. Pelosi served as Speaker of the House, the first woman to do so in American history. As a Democratic leader, Ms. Pelosi is fighting for bigger paychecks and better infrastructure for America's middle-class families. In 2013, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame at a ceremony in Seneca Falls, the birthplace of the American women's rights movement. For 28 years, Leader Pelosi has represented San Francisco's California's 12th congressional district. She has led House Democrats for more than 12 years and previously served as a House Democratic whip, and I am so proud to call her our leader. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our distinguished chairwoman, whom we're very proud, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, to Leah, thank you for your leadership. To the distinguished members of the Democratic Party Drafting Committee, thank you for this opportunity to be here. Just one correction, Mr. Chairman. Today, June 9th, is 29 years was the day I was sworn into Congress. Missed by one day. So I'm very proud
Congratulations.
to observe it being here with such a distinguished panel. I thank you for your leadership. We're so proud of your leadership in the Congress in so many ways. But we're proud of all of you as Democrats come together, stronger together, to craft an agenda to unleash the full potential of America's hardworking families. Of course, we're very proud of our members of the House who are on this panel as well. I'm honored to be here this morning with a champion for America's workers, Richard Trumka, President Richard Trumka, and I associate myself completely with his testimony and with the answers to the questions that he gave. Thank you for the opportunity to bring House Democrats gratitude to you and our confidence that you will write a values-based, ambitious platform that matches the ambitions of the middle class and the aspirations of our children, especially our poorest children. The Democratic Party has been the source of more, I'm proud of the party, we've been the source of more imagination, more idealism, more effective leadership, and more challenges to the conscience of the country than any organization you can name. We have a proud heritage which has always focused on the future, our children's future, all of our children's future. It is in that proud tradition that President Kennedy challenged our nation to go to the moon when he said, "The vows of this nation can only be fulfilled if we in this nation are first, and therefore we intend to be first." In short, our leadership in science and industry, our hopes for peace and security, our obligations to ourselves as well as others, all require that we make this effort. I am so proud again to associate myself with President Trumka's remarks. They were so comprehensive that it affords me the liberty of being specific in terms of an innovation agenda. In the spirit of President Kennedy and that heritage of the Democratic Party of being a party of the future, in that spirit, 10 years ago, House Democrats undertook the ambitious task of creating the innovation agenda. We listened to thought leaders from across the country, put together the boldest, biggest ideas that came out of those, and with a Democratic majority, we enacted 21 of the 22 pillars that we put forth. The only one that we did not succeed with was comprehensive immigration reform. It's still the fight we have. We passed the groundbreaking Competes Act, which, among other things, created ARPA-E initiative to help provide talent and resources for high-risk, high-reward clean energy research and development, invested tens of millions of dollars, breakthrough energy research, all of this under the leadership now of President Obama, and aren't we proud of our President Obama? And so much of this in the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. We invest in STEM research, K through 12, invest in community colleges, make college more affordable, providing the largest expansion of college since GI Bill. We expanded broadband to rural areas and to try to break down the digital divide by strengthening the program, especially in rural utility service programs, modernize SBIR, other business initiatives. Again, comprehensive immigration remains to be done. I tell you all these things because a continuation of these and an enhancement 10 years later, we are once again taking inventory of what we need to do for our innovators to thrive. This past decade has seen monumental advances in technology, the progress of cloud computing, data storage. I'm going quickly through this because it is a predicate to what we need to do. Broadband technology, smartphones, and precision medicine have put vast new possibilities within our grasp. And this platform, I think, has to show leadership in this regard because the Democrats have been in the lead, unlocking the promise of technology for all, and I keep emphasizing that all of our communities, our families, and our future is absolutely essential for creating more good-paying jobs, raising wages, preserving our planet, building a brighter future for America's working families while reducing the deficit in a responsible way. And I'll tell you how. This spring, House Democrats, again, Congresswoman Barbara Lee has been very much a part of it and very much insistent and successful in advancing diversity in technology and innovation. We've witnessed exchanges from experts, from university presidents, science, academics, representatives of labor, technology, venture capital. We have to attract capital to our public-private partnerships, entrepreneurs, small manufacturers, STEAM educators, and other community leaders. We're working together to unveil House Democrats Initiative 2.0. This will be our second. This is not meant to be that proposal. We're still finishing that, but an introduction to what we do. And I may say this is very consistent with President Obama's innovation agenda. His is Mission Innovation, which is part of the historic Paris Climate Accord. They're all consistent with that. Recognizing that innovation begins in the classroom, and thank you for your questions about education, recognizing that innovation begins in the classroom, recognize that education is the greatest investment a family can make in its children and a nation can make in its future, recognizing that nothing brings more money to the Treasury than the investment in the education of the American people. Early childhood, K through 12, higher education, post-grad, lifetime learning for our workers. That's how you reduce the deficit. It's a false economy to say we have to cut Pell Grants so we can reduce the deficit. It's stupid. So recognizing that, we must provide adequate funding for early childhood education, including President Obama's universal pre-K, but beginning even earlier than that for children. STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math to fuel developing minds and future innovation for all of our children in all of our neighborhoods. Making community college free, ensure that our curriculum is aligned with job opportunities of this new era, reducing the burden of student loans for those who are incurring the debt and for those who have incurred the debt, strengthening the promise of world-class education for our returning veterans, which we did with the GI Bill that we passed, recognizing that information technology has put us on the doorstep of tremendous advances in national security, clean energy, transportation, agriculture and food, smart cities and housing, education and diversity. Almost every subject you can name will be positively impacted by our information technology, and we have to make it available to everyone. We must ensure that every community and every child has access to high-speed broadband and digital literacy. That was a subject of our New York meeting last week. Grace Meng reported that to us with other members who were there. Digital literacy for all of our children. If we're going to address the opportunity gap, if we're going to address the education gap, we must address the technology gap. We must advance opportunities for community science, computer science in the schools. I'm getting to the end, Mr. Chairman. Recognizing Maryland's lead the clean energy economy, we must give and recognize competitiveness and good-paying jobs, the health of our communities, the preservation of our planet depend on energy, our commitment to energy innovations. Therefore, we must give priority to serious investments in energy research. We must have a tax credit to incentivize and enable the creation and deployment of cleaner, more efficient energy technologies, and we must be sensitive to environmental justice issues as we do so. We must advance our issues on climate with sensitivity to how it affects the poor. We must commit the resources to engage in public-private partnerships to build clean energy infrastructure. Lastly, recognizing that America must be the superpower of innovation and entrepreneurship, recognizing that obstacles facing enterprising Americans who want to take a chance on an idea, a new business, or a next great innovation We must engage in public-private partnerships, make funding for research and development a priority in the federal budget. Anybody here have a smartphone? In this smartphone, almost everything came from federal investments in research. GPS, created by the military, flat screens, LLD, digital camera, wireless data compression, research into metal alloys for strength and lightweight, voice recognition. The list goes on and on. If you want to know more, look at the Association for the Advancement of Science in America, and they have the full list. They say Steve Jobs did a good idea designing it and putting it together. Federal research invented it. And we must establish innovation hubs throughout the country and throughout our communities to attract the research dollars without just having them certain places. And we must empower young would-be entrepreneurs to take risk by lowering student debt, by helping them have access to capital, and by streamlining their path from an idea to a launch of a business. We need to take bold steps to promote American competitiveness in the 21st century. We're positioned to do it. We speak of moonshots. Many kids don't realize, well, they weren't even born, nor were some of their parents born. But it's history to them. It was my youth to me, not to many of you here, history to you. But what it took, what a commitment that it took of the ambition, creativity, and the audacity at the heart of America and the soul of America to make a launch, to send a man to the moon and back safely within 10 years. We did it faster. If we were to present a powerful and persuasive vision for the future, the Innovation Agenda 2.0 must be part of a national platform adopted by the Democratic National Committee in Philadelphia in late July. Again, America is stronger. We're stronger together. We're so excited about what's going to be happening next. I know we will have a Democratic president. We want to have as many Democrats elected to have a strong agenda for the American people, and I thank you for the opportunity to present this slice, this particular slice. Again, there's so many issues, so many experts in here on so many subjects. This particular slice, we're confident. We have to match the ambitiousness of what we do with the ambitions of the American people. I know you will do that. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be with you this morning.
Madam Leader, thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Leader, we thank you for testifying on this critically important topic of innovation. As I listen to you, one of the things that you continue to emphasize is that we must educate all of our children.
Oh.
And I've often said that the greatest threat to our national security is the failure to educate every one of them. And you're right, we cannot be about the business of blocking our children from delivering their gifts and our people from delivering their gifts. And I'm sure that you will go down in history as, among your many other accomplishments, this one will be a major one. When you said that you'd accomplished 21 out of 22 of your goals, how important is that number 22, the immigration issue?
22 is very essential to the innovation agenda. And by the way, I will, for the record, submit this was what we put forth last time. It's the prototype of what we will do this time. I just may say I'm also submitting for the record the list of session and innovation agenda meetings we've had throughout the country under the leadership of Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, who's been sort of our godmother of this proposal, but you see the diversity of
we'll make it an official part of the record.
Okay, so now, look.
Immigration.
Comprehensive immigration reform is about the character of our country. It happens to have a very pragmatic, practical application to innovation. But as I see Luis and others here have been champions on this issue, this is the constant reinvigoration of America. Immigrants are constant reinvigoration of America. With their hopes, dreams, aspirations, optimism, they're all American attitudes. With their commitment to family and faith and community and education and the rest, they make, every immigrant makes America more American. As far as innovation is concerned, it is very important that we recognize the talent that is there and take advantage. Who among them could be the President of the United States? Well, not if they weren't born here, but a family member. Who among them could have the cure for cancer? Who among them this, that, or the other thing? but for innovation, got that invigoration. So many, where I live in Northern California, the innovation capital of the world, she says modestly, so many of our companies were formed by immigrants. So many of the workers who come there here to be educated should stay here. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be investing in our own people to have all the talent that we know is there in our own communities. But it does mean that the respect that we show for other people coming from other places is important to the strength of America and the reputation of America in other countries. We're global. This is a global approach, and you can't be global by saying, keep out, we're building walls, we're building bridges.
Thank you.
So I thank so many of you, and Luis in particular, for his leadership on the immigration issue.
We're going to have 3 questions, Reese, Parker, and Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader, for your work, and I really appreciate it. At the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, you and I both spoke about voting rights, and for those that are watching from home in Ohio, we have over 100,000 signatures to get a constitutional amendment for a voter bill of rights. Can you maybe talk about, as we are fighting, purging, 2 million folks have been purged in Ohio from the voter rolls, and the constant attacks that we are having? Obviously, we can't get good leadership if folks aren't able to vote. Can you maybe talk to us in the platform on what we should have to make sure we take Dr. King's movement and make voting rights more permanent?
Thank you, Representative Reese, for your question and your leadership on this subject. It's really, I'm trying to use euphemisms here, so bear with me for a moment. We go to Selma in a bipartisan way, the 50th anniversary of the March on Selma. What an honor to be there. And then our members come back and say, that's it, right? We're not going to bring up the Voting Rights Act. I was so proud that we passed a bill to have a statue of Rosa Parks in the Capitol as we tried to put more diversity, more women there, Sojourner Truth, et cetera. That day we're dedicating the statue was the same day the Supreme Court was hearing the arguments on the Voting Rights Act. And our colleagues saw no inconsistency on them associating themselves with the courage of Rosa Parks and yet disassociating themselves with their responsibility to pass the Voting Rights Act. You referenced Dr. King. Dr. King said it the best and the simplest. The ballot, the ballot, the ballot. Legislation, legislation, legislation. Your life, your life, your life. We have to show people the connection between voting and their lives, and that's what this platform will do. However, and I don't know how some of our colleagues are deeply religious people, and I respect that, but I don't know how when they die and go to heaven and see our founders, they go up and say, I did everything I could to block people from voting. I did everything I could. How unpatriotic is that? But we don't agonize, we organize, right, Mr. Booth? We don't agonize, we organize. We're just going to go out there, do whatever we can for early voting, and make sure we can try to mitigate for the damage that they are doing to our democracy, and that they have not, and they've gotten away with not bringing up a correction to the Supreme Court decision. It's appalling. It's appalling, but we have to let the public know about that. And I will just address one other issue in this regard. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. If we are going to honor our nation, as President Kennedy referenced, honor the vows of our founders, they sacrificed their lives, their liberty, their sacred honor for a democracy, a government of the many, not a government of the money. And this money in politics, combined with the restrictions on voting, it is undermining our democracy. It is an injustice to all. It undermines liberty and justice for all. And it is something that as John Lewis says, we have every single day, we have to be doing something that says, pass the Voting Rights Act, pass the Voting Rights Act. That's not going to solve all of the problems, mind you, because they've been very intricate in what they're doing. But understand this, the goal is to suppress the vote. We know that. One other way to do it is with money to suffocate the airways with confusion, which causes people to stay home. How could it be in the last election that only 1/3 of the populace, of eligible voters voted? They didn't see the connection. This platform can be the connection. We have to work on the mechanics, own the ground, get out the vote, and win, and then change these laws. Everything is easy if we win. Voting Rights Act, you name it. TPP, Dr. West, all of these subjects are easy if we win. But voting rights, it's central. You know, I talked about immigration as being who we are, the character of our country, being immigrants coming from other countries with their hopes and dreams. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act as a continuation of the Civil Rights Act, central to our democracy. One, the character of our country. We have to restore confidence in who we are as a people, confidence in our democracy, by reducing the role of money, removing obstacles to participation, and taking that message to the public in a way that Dr. King said, showing the connection between the ballot legislation and people's lives. And thank you for your leadership on that subject.
Ms. Parker.
Yes. Thank you, Leader
Hi.
Pelosi, and thank you for your many years of service.
Thank you.
Yesterday, we heard testimony regarding the issue of homelessness. I've witnessed extreme poverty and homelessness across the reservations, across the United States, and also in rural areas. In your report, you mentioned smart cities and housing. Can you expand upon how we are going to provide housing for this population, including, and I need to mention the Alaska Natives in rural areas up there as well?
Well, and that is even being exacerbated by climate change, by what's happening. The elders have told us for like 40 years that climate change was happening, the erosion of their where they live, the change in flora and fauna in their habitat. So I thank you for bringing up our native populations in that regard. Okay, here's the thing. There are two things: affordable housing, increased housing stock, the rest. We have an absolutely incredible ranking member on our Financial Services Committee, Maxine Waters. And this issue of homelessness, since the first day I came here, was to be talking about homelessness. Never would I think all these years later we'd still be talking about. This is a challenge to the conscience of America, that families are out there. Kids in colleges, I go to the community colleges all the time, and with all the uncertainty in people's lives, there's now the uncertainty with kids of where they're going to sleep tonight. Where they're going to sleep, on somebody's sofa, in somebody's car, on the street. This is America. This is the greatest country that ever existed in the history of the world. So we have to think, and Maxine is thinking big, and that's what we have to do, think big. We have to think big about this because we have to address it head on. That we should have so many of our veterans be homeless throughout the country is awful. Now, we have in our community, San Francisco and Los Angeles, concerted efforts to end homelessness. But there has to be something more comprehensive. As I said, a challenge to the conscience of the country. Put it as a priority in our budget. A budget should be a statement of our values, of what we stand for in our country. And I say to my Republican colleagues, show us your values, show us your budget. But this is something that is a moral issue. This is an issue of morality in our country. How do you explain to children, teach them anything, if we don't even teach them the respect of having a decent place to live? So what we're thinking of is something big. Mr. Gutierrez has served on the Financial Services Committee and worked on this issue. He knows it well, as others that have. And this goes into our poverty, the leadership that Barbara Lee has provided on poverty and the rest. They're all connected. They're all grossly unfair. And again, the chairman Mr. Trumka talked about infrastructure. Part of the infrastructure has to be to increase the housing stock, to lower the more supply, hopefully lower price, but think big, big commitment. It's not happening. It's not happening 29 years later. Stewart-McKinney Act, that's what we were working on 29 years ago. Now, I'll just get personal for a moment. When I grew up, my father was mayor from when I was in first grade to when I went to college. When I was in college, he was still mayor. And the issue that my mother took on as the first lady for all those years was housing. And she said, and I was so glad that they mentioned in her obituary when she died, this thing about children and how do we teach children respect and love if we don't show them respect and love by having a decent place for them to live. That was a long time ago. That was 20 years, or even more, before I went to Congress. And it's still a challenge in our country. What more do we need to know to say our statement of values should have something very different and important? Incrementalism hasn't worked. And remember Dr. King, he said in the, everybody talks about I Have a Dream speech, it was beautiful, more people are now talking about the fierce urgency of now. But after the fierce urgency of now, he has cautioned us to beware of the tranquilizing effect of gradualism. We have to think big. Are we ready to think big on this thing? We have to win the election. And this housing issue, it's a moral issue, it's a practical matter issue. If we're going to have good paying jobs, people have to be able to live fairly near where they work. That's why the Smart Cities Initiative, so that we're not degrading the environment by having people have to drive 2 hours to work and back because they can't afford to live where they work. But it's also, it's an infrastructure issue of the highest magnitude. We should have the sophistication to have public-private partnerships, to have investments attracted to the emerging market of building housing, having a stock to lower the cost, to avoid the shame of homelessness in America. And our veterans, our children, how do we even face them?
Last question from Barbara Lee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Madam Leader. For many of us, it's Madam Speaker. And let me just say, and I want to make sure our drafting committee really remembers the fact that we would not have the Affordable Care Act as law had it not been for Nancy Pelosi, our Madam Speaker. So thank you very much for that. I think it's very important for us to recognize the importance of the innovation agenda as it relates to education, jobs, and the economy. The Democratic Party is a Big Tent party, and our speaker has made sure that all of us are included in this big tent. We've talked about computer science for all children, the role of community colleges in educating a workforce, the fact that we must have inclusion and diversity in the tech sector, the biotech sector. By 2020, there'll be over 1.5 million jobs unfilled in these sectors if we don't have a diverse, inclusive workforce that's trained for these jobs. I'd like for you to just kind of, and you've said this before, but I want you to restate why you think Democrats really need to embrace this innovation agenda, because it really is an agenda for the future. And we're talking about how we reflect our values, who we are as Democrats, so the public will really understand that there's a lot at stake in this election in November.
I thank you, and I accept your compliment about the Affordable Care Act on behalf of the House Democrats who had the courage to support the legislation. Though we didn't get everything we wanted, but nonetheless, we can build on what we have. We have to win to do that. Here's the thing. The whole world is going digital. I think it's important to see it in the context of what's happening globally. The whole world is going digital. And we're in a competitive world, and we want to be number one. It's important for us to be number one for our national security, for our economy to thrive, to create good paying jobs, bigger paychecks for American workers and the rest. And it's important for us to have an economy that values the middle class. And, I think elections are about one thing, trickle-down economics or middle-class economics. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and the decisions that you make related to that. If you believe in trickle-down, you give tax cuts to the rich, and if it trickles down, that would be good. If it doesn't, so be it. That's the free market. That's how they talk. That's how they talk every day. And by the way, while they're making their tax cut, while they're cutting their taxes, they want to reduce the deficit, so you better cut education here, there. It's reflected in how they want the budget to look and that means not investing in the middle class, research and development, and the rest of that. And they have their religious reasons why they don't want to vote in research and development, or their so-called religious reasons. So recognizing that the fight out there is between what are we doing for the middle class. Now, we don't like trickle-down economics, and we don't like trickle-down trade. You know, we know we live in a global economy, we have to engage in commerce, but we don't want it to be, and then we'll get the whatever trickles down. So this issue is about keeping America number one. It's about good paying jobs for American workers. It's about taking control of the issue, because it's going to happen, and we want it to happen with diversity, we want it to happen with fairness, we want it to engage all of our children, because this divide is brutal. You're either with it or you're not. And as I said before, if we are going to address the opportunity gap, we have to address the education gap, we have to address the technology gap as to what our children know and how they participate. Because I have no doubt, and I have every confidence, that given the opportunity that education provides, every child out there can win. And right now, we're stacking the deck against, not we intentionally, but the deck is being stacked against them because it's happening. And every meeting you go to that relates to foreign policy and the rest, other countries are doing this, and we'll be left behind. Not only will we be left behind, but these kids will be left behind. It's shameful. It's almost a homelessness thing. That is to say, some are okay and some are not. And we cannot be a party to that. So everything we talk about is liberty and justice for all. That justice is not only justice in the courts and justice and fairness in our economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, and the rest, and all of it is affected. And technology is in a hurry. When we say this is for the future is now. The IT, information technology, is having an impact on almost everything we do. Why should people be swept along by it? They should be in charge of it. And in order to have that happen, we have to have that diversity. It all begins in the classroom. We have to have all the kids participate. It is almost a gift to change the dynamic, to change the paradigm in which people participate in an economy. And it is, it's a different economic world as to whether people get a job for 30 years and stay there and get a pension or what. We have to be equipped to be agile and to move. And what that means to those kids, I gave a commencement address at Morgan State a couple of weeks ago. It was a big thrill for me because I got this was at the invitation of a gentleman named Elijah Cummings, who represents Morgan State in the Congress. But what was happy for me is my brother, when he was mayor, received an honorary degree. Also, we probably are one of the few families that have 2 honorary degrees from Morgan State in our family, wouldn't you say? But those kids knew. I was talking to a lot of them individually. They want to be with the future. They're way ahead of the rest of us. I mean, generationally, we've got to be thinking in their terms. And it's exciting. It can happen. It's only a decision. It's only a decision. And it's all about who has the leverage in the decision. And what you're doing here is to show the American people that the leverage belongs with working families in our country. That is the success of America. Trickle down only works for them. Middle class economics works for everyone. And education is, again, central to it all, and central to people reaching their personal aspirations, their own personal happiness, which is first and foremost, having our economy thrive and having us be number one in the world. Working together, we can achieve all of that. Thank you so much.
Madam Leader, thank you so very much for your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. I think, Madam Leader, now the world sees why we're so proud to call you our leader and our future speaker again.
Well, let me just say, in the interest of your time, I did not go into all the reasons that we're so very proud of Elijah Cummings and our other members who are here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.